This is the Interlinear Bible. It is the Hebrew and the Aramaic translation of the Old Testament. So God bless you and thank you for joining me today. Again, I'm outside and I'm hoping. I never know who could walk outside. So if you hear any noise, it's more than likely somebody coming out. So 2 Samuel chapter 11. And it happened at the turn of the year, at the time when kings go out, David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel. And they destroyed to Rabbah. But David remained at Jerusalem. Evening time, David rose up from his bed and walked up and down on the roof of the king's house. And he saw from the roof a woman bathing, and the woman was very good of form. And David sent and asked about the woman. And one said, "Is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" And David sent messengers and took her, and she came to him, and he lay with her. And she purified herself from uncleanness, and she returned to her house. And conceived and sent and told David, and she said, "I am with child." And David sent to Joab, "Send Uriah the Hittite to me." And Joab sent Uriah to David. And Uriah came to him, and David asked the peace of Joab and the peace of the people and of the success of the war. And David said to Uriah, "Go down to your house and wash your feet." And Uriah went out of the king's house, and a gift from the king went out after him. But Uriah lay down at the entrance of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and he did not go down to his house. And they told David, saying, "Uriah did not go down to his house." And David said to Uriah, "Have you not come from a journey? Why have you not gone down to your house?" And Uriah said to David, "The ark and Israel and Judah dwell in booths, and my lord Joab and my lord's servants are camping on the face of the field. And Shall I go into my house to eat and to drink and to lie with my wife? As you live and as your soul lives, I will not do this thing." And David said to Uriah, "Remain here today also, and tomorrow I will send you away." And Uriah remained in Jerusalem on that day and on the next day. And David called for him, and he ate and drank before him. And he made him drunk, and he went out in the evening to lie on his bed with his servants of his Lord. And he did not go down to his house. And in the morning David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah. And he wrote in the letter, saying, "Place Uriah in the front of the strongest fighting, and withdraw from him, that he may be struck and die." And it happened as Joab watched the city, that he sent Uriah to the place where he knew would be mighty men. And the men of the city went out and fought. Some of the people fell of David's servants, and Uriah the Hittite died. And Joab sent and told David all the matters of the war. And he commanded the messenger, saying, "As you finish all the matters of the war, speaking to the king, then it shall be. If the king's fury rises, and he says to you, 'Why did you draw near to the city to fight? Did you not know that they would shoot from off the wall? Who killed Abimelech, the son of Jerubbesheth? Did not a woman throw a piece of a writing millstone on him from the wall, and he died in Thebez? Why did you draw near to the wall? Then you shall say, also your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead." And the messenger went and came and told David all that which Joab had sent him to tell. And the messenger said to David, "Surely the men have been mighty, and came out to us in the field, and we were on them to the entrance of the gate, and those shooting shot at your servants from off the wall, and some of the servants of the king are dead. And also your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead." And David said to the messenger, "You shall say to Joab, 'Do not let this thing be evil in your eyes, for the sword devours one as well as another. Make your battle stronger against the city and overthrow it, and make him strong." And Uriah's wife heard that her husband Uriah was dead, and she mourned for her husband. And the morning time passed by, and David sent and gathered her to his house, and she became his wife and bore a son to him. And the thing which David had done was evil in the eyes of Jehovah. Chapter 12 of 2 Samuel. And Jehovah sent Nathan to David, and he came to him and said to him, There were two men in one city, the one rich and the other poor. The rich one had flocks and very many herds, but the poor one had nothing except one little ewe lamb, which he had bought and nourished. And it grew up with him and with the sons together. And it ate at his morsel, and it drank from his cup, and it lay in his bosom. And it was like a daughter to him. And a traveler came to the rich one, and he spared to take his own flock, and of his own herd to prepare for the traveler who had come to him. And he took the ewe lamb of the poor man, and prepared it for the man who had come to him. And David's anger glowed greatly against the man. And he said to Nathan, As Jehovah lives, surely the man who did this is a son of death, and he shall repay fourfold for the ewe lamb, because he has done this thing, and because he had no pity. And Nathan said to David, You are the man. So says Jehovah, the God of Israel, I anointed you as king over Israel, and I delivered you out of the hand of Saul, and I gave you the house of your master and your master's wives into your bosom. And I gave you the house of Israel and of Judah. And if that were too little, then I would have added to you these and those things. Why have you despised the word of Jehovah, to do the evil in his eyes? You have stricken Uriah the Hittite by the sword, and you have taken his wife to yourself for a wife, and you have killed him by the sword of his sons of Ammon. And now the sword shall not turn aside from your house continually, because you have despised me, and have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be a wife to you. So says Jehovah, Behold, I shall raise up evil against you out of your house, and shall take your wives before your eyes, and give them to your neighbor. And he shall lie with your wives in the sight of the sun. For you acted in secret, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun. And David said to Nathan, I have sinned against Jehovah. And Nathan said to David, Jehovah also has put away your sin. You shall not die, only because you have made the enemies of Jehovah to scorn derisively by this thing. Also the son who shall be born to you shall surely die. And Nathan went to his house, and Jehovah struck the boy, whom the former wife of Uriah had borne to David, and it became sick. And David sought God for the child, and David fasted a fast, and went in and stayed the night, and lay on the earth. And the elders of his house rose up toward him, to raise him up from the earth, but he was not willing, and he ate no bread with them. And it happened on the seventh day the boy died. And David's servants feared to tell him that the boy was dead. For they said, Behold, while the boy was alive, we spoke to him, and he would not listen to our voice. And how shall we say to him, The boy is dead? Then he may do harm. And David saw that his servants were whispering among themselves, and David understood that the boy was dead. And David said to his servants, Is the boy dead? And they said, He is dead. And David rose up from the earth, and bathed, and anointed. And he changed his clothing, and he came into the house of Jehovah and worshipped. And he came to his house and commanded, and they brought bread for him, and he ate. And his servants said to him, What is this thing you have done? You fasted and wept because of the living boy. Yet when the boy is... And he said, While the boy wept, for I said, Who knows? Jehovah may be gracious to me, and the boy may stay alive. And now he has died. Why this, that I should fast? Am I able to bring him back again? I shall go to him, but he shall not return to me. And David comforted his wife Bathsheba, and he went in to her and lay with her, and she bore a son, and he called his name Solomon. By the hand of Nathan the prophet, and called his name Jedediah, because of Jehovah. And Joab fought against Rabbah of the sons of Ammon, and captured the royal city. And Joab sent messengers to David, and said, I have fought against Rabbah, and I have captured the city of waters. And now gather the rest of the people, and encamp against the city, and take it, that I not take the city, and my name be called over it. And David gathered all the people, and went to Rabbah, and fought against it, and captured it. And he took the crown of their king from off his head, and its weight was a talent of gold, and a precious stone in it. And it was set on David's head. And he brought out the plunder of the city in great abundance, and he brought out the people in it, and put them to the saw. and to sharp tools of iron, and to axes of iron. And he caused them to go over into the Brickland. And so he did to all the cities of the sons of Ammon. And David and all the people returned to Jerusalem. Chapter 13 of 2 Samuel. And afterward it happened that Absalom, the son of David, had a beautiful sister, and her name was Tamar. And Amnon, the son of David, loved her. Amnon, the son of David, loved her. And Amnon was distressed, even to becoming sick, because of his sister Tamar. For she was a virgin, and it was hard in the eyes of Amnon to do anything to her. And Amnon had a friend, and his name was Jonadab, the son of Shemaiah, David's brother. And Jonadab was a very shrewd man, and he said, "Son, so puny, morning by morning, tell me." And Amnon said to him, "I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister." And Jonadab said to him, "And pretend to be ill, and your father will come in. Please let my sister Tamar come in and give me. She shall make the food before my eyes, so that I may see and may eat from her hand." And Amnon pretended to be ill. And the king came to see. And Amnon said to the king, "Sister Tamar, come, and she shall make 2 cakes before my eyes, and I shall eat from her hand." And David sent home to Tamar, saying, "Please go to the house of your brother Amnon, and make food for him." And Tamar went to her brother Amnon's house, and he was lying down. And she took the dough, and kneaded it, and made cakes before his eyes, and baked the cakes. And she took the baking pan, and poured out before him, but he refused to eat. And Amnon caused every man to go out from me, and every one of them went out from him. And Amnon said to Tamar, "Bring the food into the inner room, and I shall eat from your hand." And Tamar took the cakes that she had made, and brought them to her brother Amnon into the inner room. And she brought near to him to eat. And he laid hold on her, and said to her, "Come, lie with me, my sister." And she said to him, "No, my brother, do not humble me, for it is not done so in Israel. Do not do this foolishness. And I, where should I cause my disgrace to go? And you will be as one of the fools in Israel. But now, please speak to the king, for he shall not withhold me from you." But he was not willing to listen to her voice, and he was stronger than she, and humbled her, and lay with her. And Amnon hated her with a very great hatred, so the hatred with which he hated her was greater than the love with which he had loved her. And Amnon said to her, "Get up and go." And she said to him, "No, for this evil is greater than the other that you have done to me, to send me away." But he was not willing to listen to her. And he called his young man who attended him, and said, "Now put this one out from me, and bolt the door after her." And a long tunic was on her, for so the virgin daughters of the king usually dressed. And his attendant brought her robes outside, and bolted the door after her. And Tamar put ashes on her head, and tore the long tunic on her, and put her hand on her head, and left, going on and crying out. And her brother Absalom said to her, "Has your brother Amnon been with you? But now, my sister, keep silent. He is your brother. Do not set your heart on this thing." And Tamar lived in the house of her brother Absalom, but she was desolate. And King David heard all these things, and it angered him very much. But Absalom did not speak either good or evil with Amnon, for Absalom hated Amnon, because he had humbled his sister Tamar. And after 2 years it happened that Absalom had shears in Baal-hazor, which is beside Ephraim. And Absalom called to all the sons of the king. And Absalom came to the king and said, "Behold, your servant now has shears. Please let the king and his servants go with your servant." And the king said to Absalom, "No, my son, let us not all go now, and we shall not be too heavy on you." But he urged him, and he was not willing to go, but he blessed him. And Absalom said, "If not, please let my brother Amnon go with us." And the king said to him, "Why should he go with you?" And Absalom urged him, and he sent Amnon with him and all his king's sons. And Absalom commanded his young men, saying, "Now watch when Amnon's heart is glad with wine. And when I say to you, strike Amnon, you shall kill him. Do not fear. Did I not command you? Be strong and be valiant. And the young men of Absalom did to Amnon as Absalom commanded. And all the king's sons rose up, and they each rode on his mule and fled. And it happened while they were in the highway, even the report had come to David, saying, Absalom has stricken all the sons of the king, and not one of them is left. And the king rose up and tore his garments, and lay on the earth, and all his servants were standing by with torn garments. And Jonadab, the son of Shemaiah, David's brother, answered and said, Do not let my lord say, They have killed all the young men, the king's sons, for only Amnon settled by of his sister Tamar. And now do not let my lord the king lay the word to heart, saying, All the king's sons have died. Amnon is dead. And Absalom fled, lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, many people were coming by the highway behind him, by the side of the hill. And Jonadab said to the king, See, the sons of the king have come. As the word of your servant, so it has been. And it happened, as he finished speaking, behold, the king's sons came. And they lifted up their voice and wept, and also the king and all his servants wept with a very great weeping. And Absalom fled, and went to Talmai, the son of Ammihud, the king of Geshur. And David mourned for his son all the time. And Absalom had fled, and had gone to Geshur, and was there 3 years. And King David determined to go out to Absalom, for he had been comforted for Amnon, for he was dead. 2 Samuel chapter 14. And Joab the son of Zeruiah knew that the king's heart was on Absalom. And Joab sent to Tekoa, and took a wise woman from there, and said to her, Pretend yourself to be a mourner now, and please put on garments of mourning, and do not anoint yourself with oil, and you shall be a woman mourning for the dead these many days. And you shall go to the king and speak with him according to this word. And the woman of Tekoa spoke to the king and to the earth, and bowed and said, Save, O king. And the king said to her, What shall be to you? And she said, Truly I am a widow woman, and my husband died. And your servant had 2 sons, and the 2 of them fought in the field, and there was no deliverer between them. And the one struck the other, and killed him. And behold, the whole family has risen against your servant, and said, Give up him who struck his brother for the life of his brother whom he has slain. And we shall also destroy the heir, and they shall quench my coal which is left, so as not to set to my husband a name and remnant on the face of the earth. And the king said to her, Go to your house, and I will give command concerning you. And the woman of Tekoa said to the king, My lord, O king, let the iniquity be on me, and on my father's house, and the king and his throne shall be guiltless. And the king said, Whoever speaks to you, you also shall bring him to me. Then he shall not touch you any more. And she said, Please let the your God, that the Redeemer of blood not destroy any more, and that they may not destroy my son. And he said, As Jehovah lives, not one hair on your son shall fall to the earth. And the woman said, Please let your servant speak a word to my lord the king. And he said, Speak. And the woman said, And why have you thought in this way about the people of God? Yea, the king is speaking this thing as a guilty one, in that the king has not brought back his outcast. For we do surely die, and are as water which is spilled on the ground, which cannot be gathered up. And God does not take a life, but he has devised plans, so that the outcast is not cast out from him. And now that I have this word to my lord the king, because the people made me afraid. And your servant said, Please let me speak to the king. It may be the king shall do the word of his servant. For the king has listened to deliver his servant out of the hand of the man seeking to destroy me and my son together out of the inheritance of God. And your servant said, Please let the word of my lord the king be comforting. For as a messenger of God, so is my lord the king, to understand the. And the king answered and said to the woman, that I am asking you. And the woman said, Then let my lord. The king said, Is the hand of Joab with you in all? And the woman answered and said, As your soul lives, my lord, O king, none shall turn to the right or to the left from all that my lord the king has spoken. For your servant Joab commanded me, and he put all these words in your servant's mouth. Your servant Joab has done this thing to turn about the face of the matter. And my lord is wise according to the wisdom of an angel of God, to know all that is in the land. And the king said to Joab, Behold, now I have done this thing. Then go, bring back the young man, Absalom. And Joab fell on his face to the earth and bowed and blessed the king. And Joab said, Today your servant has known that I have found grace in your eyes, my lord, O king, in that the king has done the word of his servant. And Joab rose up and went to Geshur and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. And he shall not see my face. And Absalom, and no man was raised from the sole of his foot to his crown, there was not a blemish in him. And when he sheared his head, for it was at the end of days that he sheared it, because the hair was heavy on him, and he sheared it, he hair of his head at 200 shekels by the king's weight. And 3 sons were born to Absalom, and 1 daughter, and her name was Tamar. She was a woman of a beautiful form, and Absalom lived in Jerusalem 2 years, and had not seen the king's face. And Absalom sent to Joab to send him to the king, but he was not him. And he sent again a second time, and he was not willing to come. And he said to his servants, Behold, Joab's allotment is beside me, and he has barley there. Barley there. Go and set it on fire. And Absalom's servant set the allotment on fire. And Joab rose up and came to Absalom to the house and said to him, Why have your servants set my allotment on fire? And Absalom said to Joab, Behold, I sent to you, saying, Come here, and I will send you to the king to say, Why have I come from Geshur? It was good for me to be there still. And now let me see the king's face, and if there is guilt in me, then let him execute me. And Joab came to the king and told him, and he called to Absalom. And he came to the king, and he bowed to him on his face to the earth before the king. And the king gave a kiss to Absalom. Chapter 15 of 2 Samuel. And it happened afterward, a chariot for himself and horses, and 50 men running before him. And Absalom rose up and stood by the side of the way of the gate. And it happened that every man who had a cause to come to the king for judgment, Absalom would call to him and say, Of what city are you? And he said, Your servant is from one of the tribes of Israel. And Absalom said to him, Behold, your matters are good and right, and there is no listener to you from the king. And Absalom said, Who shall make me a judge in the land, that every man who has a dispute, even with justice, I will turn? I will then declare him right. And it happened when a man drew near to bow his head and laid hold on him and gave him a kiss. And Absalom acted this way to all Israel who came in for judgment to the king. And Absalom stole the heart of the men of Israel. Years it happened, Absalom said to the king, Please, I shall pay my vow that I have vowed to Jehovah in Hebron. For your servant has vowed a vow when I lived in Geshur in Syria, saying, If you shall surely bring me back to Jerusalem, then I shall serve Jehovah. And the king said to him, Go in peace. And he rose up and went to Hebron. And Absalom sent spies among all the tribes of Israel, saying, When you hear the sound of a ram's horn, then you shall say, Absalom is king in Hebron. And 200 men went out from Jerusalem with Absalom, chosen ones, and they went out in their simplicity and did not know anything. And Absalom sent Ahithophel the Gileonite, a counselor of David, out of his city, out of Gilo, as he offered the sacrifices. And the conspiracy was strong, and the people were going on, increasing with Absalom. And a messenger came to David, saying, The hearts of the men of Israel have gone after Absalom. And David said to all his servants who were with him in Jerusalem, Rise up, and we will flee, for we have no escape from the face of Absalom. Hurry to leave, that he not overtake us and bring evil down on us, and strike the city with the mouth of the sword. And the king's servant said to the king, According to all that my lord the king desires, behold, your servants will do. And the king went out, and all his household at his feet. And the king left 10 women, concubines, to keep the house. And the king went out, and all the people at his feet, and they stood still at the house farthest away. And all his servants were passing on at his side. And all the Cherethites, and all the Pelethites, and all the Gethites, 600 men who came at his feet from Gath. These were passing on before the king. And the king said to Attai, the Gethite, Why do you go, even you with us? Turn back and remain with the king, for you are an alien, and also you are an Go to your place. I shall make you go with us, to go while turn back and take your brothers with you in kindness. And Attai replied to the king and said, As Jehovah lives and my lord the king lives, surely in the place where my lord the king is, there your servant shall be, whether for death or for life. And David said to Attai, Go on and pass over. And Attai, the king, passed over, and all his men, and all the little ones with him, and all loud voice, and all the people were passing over. And the king was passing over through the brook Kidron, and all the people passed over toward the way of the wilderness. And behold, Zadok also came, and all the Levites with him, bearing the ark of the covenant of God. And they set the ark of God down, and Abiathar went up until all the people finished passing on out of the city. And the king said to Zadok, Take the ark of God back to the city. If I find grace in the eyes of Jehovah, then he will bring me back and show it, and his dwelling place to me. And if he says this, I have not delighted in you, behold, I am here. He shall do me as seems good in his eyes. And the king said to Zadok the priest, Are you a seer? Return to the city in peace, and your 2 sons with you, your son Ahimaaz, and Jonathan, the son of Abiathar. Behold, I will wait in the plain of the wilderness until the word comes from you to report to me. And Zadok and Abiathar took the ark of God back to Jerusalem, and they remained there. And David was going up in the ascent of the olives, going up and weeping, and his head was covered, and he was going barefooted. And all the people who were with him each had covered his head, and had gone up, going up and weeping. And one told David, saying, Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. And David said, O Jehovah, I pray you, make the counsel of Ahithophel foolish. And it happened as David had come to the top, there where he bowed to God. And behold, Hushai, the Archite came to meet him, his tunic torn, and earth on his head. And David said to him, If you pass on with me, then you shall be a burden to me. But if you return to the city, and shall say to Absalom, I also will be your servant, O king, and I also was servant of your father before now, and now I am also your servant, then you can break down the counsel of Ahithophel for me. And do you not have there with you Zadok and Abiathar the priest? And it shall be, you shall declare everything that you hear from the house of the king. You shall report to Zadok and to Abiathar the priest. Behold, there are with them 2 sons, Ahimaaz and to Zadok, and Jonathan to Abiathar. And you shall send to me by their hand anything that you hear. And David's friend, Hushai, came into the city, and Absalom came into Jerusalem. If it be the Lord's will, tomorrow we will continue to read chapters 16 through 20. God bless you. Father, I pray ministering angels to continue to go before and after your children who are seeking you. I pray, Father, that we would glean daily from your word and continue to be the daily sacrifice.